till the morning after that storm felt different. The air was cold, heavy, and too still for spring. I remember sitting by the window, watching the smoke rise from the chimney of the old Miller house across the street. And for the first time, I felt like every piece of my small town was holding its breath. That photograph had burned my sleep away, a man with a scar, woman named Eleanor, and my mother's trembling hands when she saw it. I couldn't shake the thought that the truth wasn't in the picture. It was in what my mother didn't say. By noon, I made myself walk down to the old shed behind our house. My mother kept an old cedar chest there, one she hadn't opened in years. The smell of oil and dust was thick, the kind of smell that pulls you backward in time. I lifted the lid. Inside were folded letters tied with blue ribbon, an army badge, and a postcard that said simply, "Meet me where the fire began." That phrase stayed with me. Where the fire began. There had been a fire when I was a child, a terrible one that took half the town's sawmill. My mother worked there before she married my father. I never thought she'd kept anything from that time, but now the pieces began to fit together like jagged glass. As I held the postcard, I heard my mother's voice from the kitchen. Weak, but steady. "Don't open what can't be closed, Mary." Her tone sent chills down my spine. I didn't answer. I just placed the postcard back. For now. That night, after she went to bed, I slipped out of the house and walked toward the edge of town, where the ruins of the old sawmill still stood. The wind carried the faint scent of burnt wood, even after all those years. I followed the path until I reached the rusted gate. And there, by the fence post, was something new. Fresh flowers. Someone else had been visiting. The flowers at the gate. The flowers were lilacs, pale purple, still fresh with dew. Nobody in our town sold lilacs in March. That meant whoever placed them there grew them, or brought them from far away. I bent closer, my fingers brushing the soft petals, and saw a slip of paper tied to the stems with twine. It wasn't a note, but a single word written in pencil, half faded by moisture. Forgive. My heart jumped. For a long time, I just stood there in the cold, staring at that word like it might speak again. Forgive? Who? My mother? The man with the scar? Or maybe me? The ruins of the old sawmill loomed behind the gate, blackened timbers still jutting like bones against the gray sky. My footsteps crunched on broken glass as I pushed open the rusted gate. The hinges moaned, a sound I'll never forget. I remembered standing there once before, a little girl holding my mother's hand, watching the fire burn in the distance, the red glow reflected in her eyes. She'd told me no one was hurt, that everyone made it out alive. But now I wasn't sure if that was true. I walked deeper into the ruins. Ash still covered parts of the ground like gray snow. Then I saw it. An old bench, half burned, hidden behind the collapsed office wall. On it lay a small metal tin with initials scratched onto the lid. E.L. My heart froze. Eleanor. The tin was warm to the touch, impossibly warm, as if someone had just left it there. I opened it carefully. Inside were two things: a folded letter and a gold ring with a deep scratch running across its band. I unfolded the letter, my hands trembling. The handwriting was delicate, looping, like my mother's. To whoever finds this, I couldn't carry the truth anymore. The fire didn't take everyone. It took him. He was innocent. He tried to save us. The scar on his face wasn't from the war. It was from me. I read it 3 times before it sank in. The scar, the man at the gas station, the way my mother froze when she saw him. It wasn't chance. He'd come back, not as a stranger, but as the past itself. A sound broke through my thoughts. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, on gravel. I turned sharply, clutching the tin to my chest. "Who's there?" The footsteps stopped. Then a voice, low and familiar. "You shouldn't be here." "Mary!" I felt the world spin. It was Sheriff Dalton, the man who'd been my father's friend since before I was born. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. He sighed, his breath visible in the cold. "Looking for you. Your mama told me you'd gone wandering again. You always were curious." He stepped closer, and then, quietly, "You found it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. He nodded slowly as if I'd confirmed it. "Some fires," he said, looking around the ruins. "Never really go out. Sheriff Dalton's secret Sheriff Dalton stood there for a long moment, his boots crunching over charred wood, eyes fixed on the wreckage like it still held something alive. The wind lifted the smell of ash again, and for a second, I could swear I saw guilt in his face, the kind that never leaves a man. He took off his hat and rubbed his forehead. "I always hoped you wouldn't come here, Mary," he said quietly. "But I guess it was only a matter of time." I swallowed hard. "What do you know about this place, Sheriff?" "About my mother." "And that man?" He looked up sharply. "What man?" "The one with the scar," I said. "He came to the station last week. My mother recognized him." "I saw it." Dalton's eyes darkened. "Then he's alive." I frowned. "You sound like that's a problem." He sighed again, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders. "Mary, that fire back in 47, it wasn't an accident. And your mother, she wasn't just another worker here. She was in the middle of it." My chest tightened. "What are you saying?" He hesitated, then motioned for me to follow him. We walked toward the far end of the ruins, where an old concrete foundation still stood, half buried under weeds. He knelt and brushed away the dirt, revealing something that looked like a metal tag bolted into the ground. It read, "In memory of James L. Carter, 1918-1947. "Who was he?" I asked. Dalton looked up at me with eyes full of regret. "He was the man with the scar." The ground seemed to tilt under my feet. "But he's not dead," I whispered. "I saw him." Dalton shook his head slowly. "No, Mary, you saw someone who survived. But he wasn't supposed to." He sat back on his heels, his voice low and uneven. "James Carter was your mother's fiancé, before she met your father. They worked here together. When the fire broke out, the building was supposed to be empty. But someone had gone back in, for a box of payroll ledgers. The beams collapsed, and Carter was trapped. He saved 3 people before the roof came down. Your mother thought he'd died in the flames. So did I." He looked toward the smoke-stained timbers. "I found what was left of him, or what I thought was him. We buried an empty coffin, Mary. That plaque's been lying to this town ever since." I felt my breath catch. Why would my mother never tell me? "Because guilt changes people," he said. "She was the one who left that lantern burning. The one that started it all." The words hit me like a blow. My mother, the fire, the deaths, the secret man. I clutched the tin box tighter. And this? The letter, the ring. Dalton's eyes flicked to the tin. "You found Eleanor's things, didn't you?" "Eleanor," I repeated. "Who was she?" He hesitated, his hand tightening on the edge of his coat. "Eleanor was James's wife, the one he married after your mother left town." My stomach turned. So my mother's lost love hadn't died. He'd just vanished and built another life. Dalton continued. "When he came back here, he wasn't looking for revenge. He was looking for closure. But your mother couldn't face him." The sky above us began to darken. A single crow called from the trees, its echo fading into the empty yard. "Sheriff?" I asked softly. "Why are you telling me this now?" He stared at the burned remains of the mill one last time. "Because your mama's time is running short," he said. "And before she goes, there's something she needs you to see. Something she buried long before this fire." Then he turned, his voice suddenly sharp. "Promise me you won't go digging for it alone. Mary, some truths don't want to be found." He walked away, his shadow long against the fading light. I stood there, the tin trembling in my hands, the air thick with secrets. And for the first time in my life, I realized my mother's past wasn't behind her. It was waiting. The buried box. The wind howled that night as if the ghosts of the fire were still searching for warmth. I barely slept. Every creak of the house felt like the crackle of burning wood. The sheriff's words replayed in my head. Something she buried long before this fire. By morning, I'd made up my mind. My mother was sitting in her rocker by the window, wrapped in her old quilt, the one with faded blue stars. Her eyes followed me as I crossed the room. "You went back there," she said softly. I froze. "How did you?" She gave a tired smile. "A mother always knows." I knelt beside her. "Why didn't you tell me the truth about the fire?" "About James Carter?" Her hands trembled as she reached for her teacup. "Because the truth is heavier than the lie, Mary. I carried it for 50 years, and it never got lighter." "Then let me carry it with you," I whispered. She stared at me for a long time, then nodded toward the old cedar chest in the corner. "Bring it here." I dragged the heavy box across the floor. She took a key from a chain around her neck and handed it to me. "Inside, under the lining," she said. "Lift it." My hands shook as I peeled back the faded fabric. Beneath it was a small wooden box, sealed with wax, almost black with age. My mother's breath grew shallow. That box was meant for James, but he never came back. I opened the box. Inside was a bundle of photographs, burned around the edges, and a thin leather journal. The first page bore her name, Eleanor L. Thompson. "Eleanor," I breathed. She closed her eyes. "That was my name before I married your father. I changed it after the fire." The room seemed to shrink. My knees weakened as I realized my mother was Eleanor. All those years, she'd lived under a new name, hiding from her own past. I flipped through the journal, page after page of ink-stained confession. Entries dated months before the fire told of an affair between her and a married man, James Carter. How they'd planned to run away together. How one night, a fight broke out, a lamp overturned, and flames devoured everything before dawn. Tears blurred my vision. "You weren't trying to hurt anyone," I said. "No," she whispered. "But pain doesn't care about intentions." She leaned back, her voice breaking. "When I saw that man at the station last week, I thought I was seeing a ghost. I didn't know he was still alive. But he forgave me, Mary. He said he forgave me." I wiped her tears. "Then you can forgive yourself too." But she only shook her head. "There's more," she said weakly. "I never told you who your real father was." The room went still. The ticking clock seemed to grow louder, counting down to the truth. She tried to speak, but her voice faltered. "James." A loud knock at the door interrupted her. I turned sharply. Outside, through the frosted glass, stood a figure, tall, wearing a gray coat, hat pulled low. For a second, the morning light revealed part of his face, the deep scar. My breath caught. He was back. I turned to my mother, but her eyes were closed. Exhausted, or unconscious, I couldn't tell. The knock came again. Slower this time. I rose to my feet, my pulse thundering. The tin box, the letter, the journal, all of it lay open on the floor. I stepped to the door and whispered to myself, "Some ghosts don't haunt, they return." And I opened it. The truth beneath the ashes. The door creaked open, and the cold air pushed in first. Behind it stood the man with the scar. His face was older now, rough like the bark of an oak that had weathered every storm. The scar ran down from his temple to the corner of his lip, pale against his sun-worn skin. For a second, neither of us spoke. The years between us hummed like electricity. "Mary," he said quietly, tipping his hat. "You look just like her." I swallowed hard. "James Carter." He nodded once, stepping inside. His boots left wet prints on the floorboards. When his eyes met my mother's motionless form in the chair, a tremor crossed his face. "Eleanor," he whispered. I closed the door, heart pounding. "She's weak." She tried to tell me everything. He looked around the small living room, the photographs, the worn furniture, the life my mother had built on the ashes of another. "She was always running," he said softly. "But the past runs faster." My mother stirred then, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she didn't seem to see him. Then recognition struck, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "James," she gasped, reaching for him. He dropped to his knees beside her chair and took her frail hand in both of his. "I never meant to frighten you," he said. I just wanted to see you one last time. She shook her head. I thought you were dead. So did I, he said. I crawled out through the back wall of that mill, half burned, half mad. I left town because I thought if I stayed, they'd hang me for starting the fire. It was me, she whispered. It was my lantern? He smiled sadly. I know. Dalton told me before he passed. I forgave you years ago. Her tears came faster now, and I felt mine rising too. I wanted to speak, to ask the question burning inside me, but he turned to me first. You read the journal, didn't you? I nodded. You loved her. I still do, he said simply. Then, after a pause that seemed to swallow the whole room, he added, and you deserve to know who you are. The air went still. He looked at my mother. May I tell her? She nodded faintly. He faced me again. Mary, I'm your father. The words landed like thunder in my chest. I wanted to deny it, to protect the story I'd lived with for 70 years. But deep down, it made sense. The way my mother's eyes softened every time she spoke of the fire, the way Sheriff Dalton always avoided my questions. I sank to the floor, tears streaming silently. All these years, I wanted to come for you, he said, voice trembling. But your mother begged me to stay away. She thought you deserved a clean life, a name without smoke on it. My mother's hand reached out for mine. I did what I thought was right, she whispered. I gripped her hand. You should have told me, she smiled faintly. Would it have changed how much I loved you? No, I said, breaking. But it would have changed how much I understood you. For a long time, none of us spoke. The wind tapped at the window, and somewhere outside a train horn echoed. The sound of leaving, of endings. James rose slowly, pressing something into my palm. It was the gold ring from the tin box, polished clean now, gleaming under the lamplight. It was meant for her, he said, but maybe it belongs to you now. You're the proof that love survives fire. I wanted to say something, anything, but my mother's breath hitched. Her hand tightened, then loosened. Mom? Her eyes met mine one last time. Tell the truth, Mary, she whispered. All of it. Then she was still. The old clock on the wall struck once. Outside, the wind stopped. James bowed his head, tears tracing the scar that time could never heal. I knelt beside her and whispered, I will. I promise. It's been 5 years since that day. The sawmill's ruins are gone now, turned into a memorial garden. Every spring I plant lilacs by the gate, purple just like the ones I found that night. James visits sometimes. We don't speak much. We don't need to. The silence between us is full of everything we finally know. I tell these stories now for the ones who keep their pain locked away, for those who bury their truth beneath the ashes of time. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to speak, and that's what I do, one story at a time.